25th Hour Radio Show.
You're tuned in to the 25th Hour Radio Show. I'm your host, Rob Fairless. On behalf of my co-host, Randy Ashby, we would like to welcome you to today's program. Today we have on the show former member of Celtic Thunder and accomplished solo artist Paul Byrom. Paul, welcome to the program.
Delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. Paul, you're living in the United States now. You said you've been here for like 2 years, you say?
Yeah, we kind of came over here. Well, actually, I was on tour with Celtic Thunder about 2 years ago, and we finished up on the 10th or the 9th of December. And literally, I got off the bus on the 10th of December in New York with all my cases, and that's coming up to 2 years now. This December coming. So we've really kind of been trying to make home here and get ourselves settled and continue the career, hopefully in the same vein and success that Celtic Thunder was.
Is there any adjustments you've had to make since coming to the U.S.? Anything you're not used to?
Well, I suppose the biggest adjustment I've had to make since coming to New York in particular is having to deal with public transport. So back home in Ireland, I would have had my own car and kind of gone from A to B without kind of having to deal with anybody or have anybody stumble on you or whatever it might be. So obviously going from that to a subway is very different and certainly an eye-opener. But you wouldn't really want to be having a car in New York because, the standard of driving is pretty horrendous. And so therefore the best way to get around is the subway.
Now, Paul, you pretty much always known you were going to be a musician, didn't you? You started vocally training at a very young age, did you not?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I got to say when you talk to my mother about it, she often refers to the fact that at the age of 4, I was, whenever any guests were over visiting or whatever, cousins or family or whatever might have been visiting, I'd always kind of take the center of the floor and be putting on some shape or form of entertainment for the family and friends and stuff. And, and that was kind of, as I said, from the age of 4. So then when I started in school, in proper school at the age of 7, they discovered that, there was a little bit more to it than maybe just being the class clown. So I ended up taking vocal lessons and it just kind of went from strength to strength. And it was one of those things that I suppose my parents were being supportive of, but never kind of really knew whether I would be any good at it. And then, as I said, we discovered fairly soon into it that there was a little bit more to it than just being able to hold a note. So I was very fortunate. And, of course, around the age of 12, I got cast in a professional production of Amal and the Night Visitors, which is an opera which was being staged with our National Concert Orchestra. And I got cast in the principal role of Amal, and it was the first time I'd ever kind of stood in front of a large audience with that scale. And as any performer will tell you, you get that bug immediately. It's quite instant, and it just hits you. And I suppose from the age of 12, I kind of knew then at that point that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I just had to get through the next, 6 to 8 years of school to be able to fulfill that,
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, you said you were a class clown. Now, did you give your mom any trouble growing up being a class clown?
Well, not necessarily. No, I was actually quite well behaved as a kid, but I was always kind of showing off. I mean, certainly in school, I was always the first one to kind of crack the joke in the classroom, and I would have been the first to kind of make a smart comment. And I was that aegis that everybody kind of went, rolled their eyes at, but. I wouldn't have caused much more trouble than that, and so I'm glad to say that I think my mom would actually probably back me up on that. But saying that, I was pretty ridiculous in the classroom.
So you're pretty much you were born to be a performer, basically.
Yeah, and it's kind of some say it's a blessing. Others, if you're living with me, would say different.
Now, you actually had the opportunity to perform for President Obama a few years back. What was that experience like, performing for the President of the United States?
Well, I mean, you can imagine it was a phenomenal experience. It wasn't just necessarily that I was performing for President Obama, but I mean, if you remember correctly, just before he got elected, I mean, there was a great buzz around his election campaign, and certainly when he came into office, there was a real sense of this is something new, this is something different, and I suppose he in Ireland certainly, you know, there was a great buzz about him as well, and so to be invited to sing on his first St. Patrick's Day celebration at the White House was a huge honor, you know, and it was a great experience. And getting into the White House, I mean, I like American politics anyway. I would be kind of a keen, neutral observer of the politics over here. So I certainly, and I enjoy American history. So to be able to get into the hollow walls of the White House and see it firsthand and experience it firsthand, and of course, then to get to meet the president and the first lady was a phenomenal experience. I mean, they were utterly charming and gracious and very, very appreciative of our performance there, and it's certainly something I will cherish for the rest of my life, you know.
That is awesome. Randy, you got some questions for Paul?
Oh, yeah. Well, Paul, I read where you recorded your first album at 14 years old. Is that true?
Yeah. It was called The Golden Voice of Paul Byrom.
Well, what kind of experience was that, to be so young and in a professional setting like that?
Well, I see. It was actually recorded not really with the intention of being anything other than capturing the boy soprano voice, because as I'm sure you're well aware that, you know, when you're coming to kind of 15 years of age, the voice drops, you know, and all of a sudden that boy soprano angelic voice is gone, and you know, it's never to be heard again. And I suppose because I had accomplished quite a bit as a boy soprano, you know, my family were quite conscious that we should put something down in studio, you know, so that we'd have something to look back on in years to come. And that was very much the initial intention. And then when we went in and we put down some tracks with a man called Michael Casey, who worked for our national broadcaster, he brought in a couple of people to listen to it, and then all of a sudden they were like, well, we got to release this. And so it was released that Christmas and did very well. So it was, as I said, something that was never intended to be anything other than creating a souvenir or a memory for the long term. And then, in actual fact, what worked out quite great was a couple of years ago I recorded a Christmas album as a tenor, and my mother actually said, Paul, would you not try and do a duet with yourself as a boy soprano? And I thought, God, that's a brilliant idea. So in we went, and we took the track of side that I recorded as a boy soprano, which was Silent Night, and then I doubled up on that, and I was able to duet with myself. So it actually was quite a little novel idea that worked out quite well on the Christmas album. So it was the gift that kept on giving, that album.
Well, where do you draw your strength for your vocals? You have an amazing voice. What is there somewhere deep down inside of you that you pull this ability out, or is this something you just practice over the years to become, you know?
You know what? It's a very good question, and it's an interesting one, and I don't think there's a definitive answer to it. I think you know, certainly, you know, training and all the rest, you fine tune your talent, and you can fine tune what it is that you do. I think you know, certainly you have to have a talent, I suppose. You need to be able to sing. So I certainly pull on all the training that I've received over the years, and I've been very fortunate in that I've received some of the best training that was available to me in Ireland anyway, you know. And but I think certainly when it comes to performance of certain songs, I mean, you know, I think I draw very much on life experiences, you know, and I've been very fortunate that I've had a very blessed life and a very good life, and I've got a wonderful family and a great support network in Ireland and here, indeed, in the States as well. But life can throw some, you know, swerve balls at you as well, and can give you some difficult times as well. And although they may be difficult at the time, they're certainly things that can make you as a person, as a character. And therefore, you know, when you're delivering certain songs, and a lot of my repertoire would be kind of heartfelt songs. It's you know, I go to those places, you know, that brought the most emotion in my life, and I'm able to kind of draw on that to deliver what I hope, generally speaking, is a heartfelt rendition of any given song.
Now, you said you've been singing since you were 4 years old. Do you ever see yourself getting to the point where you just retire and just step away from the music, or is it something you'll do to go to the great beyond?
Yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I think I hope I will be surrounded by enough people that I respect and love that we'll get to the point where, you know, if I'm not really pleasant on the ears, I think it's important for somebody to say, Paul, maybe it's time to you know, to take a back seat for a while or give it up altogether. You know, because you certainly want to be able to give the best of your ability. That's my ambition and my goal every time I step onto the stage and every time I go into a recording studio. And so therefore, I would hate to get to the point where I'm singing and it's not great, you know. And I don't know whether or not maybe the voice or the style of songs will change as I get older, and maybe I'll be able to adjust to what my vocal abilities will be. But certainly, you know, you look at Tony Bennett, and Tony Bennett is still belting out the tunes and to a great quality and great standard and great style. And so if he can do it, well then, why the hell can't I?
Yeah, all right. Tony Bennett is phenomenal. He is a phenomenal singer.
The only thing is he's doing it for pleasure. I might be at his age and still doing it to pay my mortgage. So who knows? You know, it all depends on what's in the bank account. You know.
I got one more question for you, and then I'll turn it back over to Rob. You know, we're talking about your younger years. You know, would you say that you had a normal childhood? I mean, did the music affect your growing up in any way?
Yeah, great question again. I think I certainly did have a normal childhood, and singing was just certainly something that I enjoyed, you know, and I just did. I mean, I would have gone to singing classes twice a week for an hour, and then I would have gone to choir practice on a Friday night for an hour or so, and then Sunday morning would have been Mass, and Saturday evening would have been Mass. So, you know, I would have, all the other time I would have gone to school, I would have played football, I was huge into my Lego, you know, normal things that normal kids did, you know, and it was just a case that as I got older, it was part of me as a person as opposed to what I did, you know, and it never hampered or altered the standard of living I had. I never missed out because of singing or because of what I was doing. And so, yeah, I would definitely think I had a normal childhood, absolutely.
Awesome.
Now, Paul, have you seen a resurgence in fans of classical music? I guess you might say from the average Joe. I mean, would you consider the United States a classical music country as compared to other parts of the world that you've performed in?
Well, I mean, I would, absolutely. I mean, you know, I don't have to go far from where I'm sitting right now to be sitting in one of the greatest opera houses in the world, which is the Met. And you know, it's steeped in history, and then the standard of training and education available to aspiring singers here in America is second to none. I think the amount of people that enjoy classical music here is phenomenal. I think there was always a strong core, but I think for a long period of time, though, classical music was kind of considered to be for the elite or for people that were of the upper class, you know. And I think what's been great about recent times is that it's certainly been brought to, I hate to use the term, but for want of a better term, the average Joe soap, you know, and so everybody's able to enjoy it, and I think there's something in it for everybody. And of course, a lot of people are more willing to listen to it now than they would have been in the past because of that, you know, this perception that it was just for the wealthy or just for the, you know, super educated. And I think more people are willing to try it out. I always say kind of classical music is kind of like Chinese food. Unless you try it, you won't really know, you know. So I think a lot more people are out there giving it a shot. And I look at even, you know, the followers that I have on Twitter and Facebook, etc. And even at my own concerts, you know, I mean, I'm seeing, you know, kids coming to my gigs, you know, and right up to teenagers, early teens, you know, whereas, you know, when I was starting out, your audience would have all been the Blue Rinse Brigade, you know, and that's meant in the nicest possible way, but there would have been an older person that would have come to hear me sing, whereas now it's a absolutely wide variety of people coming.
Now, what's the biggest venue in your mind that you've performed at? I mean, after you're through, you know, you're thinking to yourself, wow, you know, I can't believe I just performed there.
Well, yeah, I think, when I was with Celtic Thunder, we had the great pleasure of performing at Radio City, and certainly it's one of those iconic venues that you kind of grow up kind of imagining you're going to perform there one day, but never really believing it, and then all of a sudden you're standing on the stage, and it's quite quite an amazing experience, to say the very least. And even to this day, when I'm passing it there on 6th Avenue, every now and again I go, God, I actually did that venue. I mean, that's pretty cool. If I do nothing else, I can always say that. And, I've got great aspirations to perform in other great venues, maybe not as big as, let's say, Radio City, but, for example, like Carnegie Hall would be my dream venue to perform at. And there's something about it, I suppose, because of my upbringing and my training and all of that when they say you performed at Carnegie Hall, it stands to you for the rest of your life. So although Radio City would categorically be the biggest venue I've played in, there's hope for bigger and better,
Mm-hmm. Now, I hear you're a huge fan of American sports. Is there any particular team you follow right now?
Yeah, I do. I'm a big Boston Celtics fan. I love the basketball because obviously, whether you know or not, I sing quite regularly for the Boston Celtics. I get to perform the national anthem for them on a regular basis. So I've become quite an avid fan of theirs, and I've got to meet Doc Rivers on a number of occasions, and so I've got a big leaning towards that. Certainly with regards to the American football, I had the pleasure many moons ago of performing the national anthem for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I shout for them when it comes to the American football, and of course now living here I've got into it even more. Bit of a topsy-turvy start to the season, but I think everybody's kind of a bit disarrayed at the moment for whatever reason. I think with the referees striking and everything, that didn't really help the season beginning off. But yeah, I'm a big sports fan. I do love sports, and soccer is my main passion in life, and I wake up every Saturday morning at the crack of dawn to sit on my couch and watch the football in England.
Mm-hmm. I want to change subject just a little bit. In 2007, you joined up with Celtic Thunder, which was a huge act, or is still a huge act, known worldwide. Did your life drastically change when you joined the group? Was there a period of adjustment?
No, I wouldn't say it did, to be very honest with you. In that, when I signed up for it, I was reluctant. I've always made it, clear that I was very reluctant to join it, and because of the fact that I had been doing, relatively well as a solo artist prior to joining Celtic Thunder in Ireland and in the UK, and so. When Phil Coulter came to me and said, Paul, I think you'll fit into this show great, and I think it's going to be a great opportunity for you to break into America, I kind of thought, right, well, let's go with it, and certainly when he mentioned that PBS were involved, it was certainly something that I thought, well, this is a great opportunity, because I saw the PBS had on the careers of Celtic Woman. I had seen the strength PBS had on the careers of the three Irish tenors, and so I felt, well, look, if I can get a piece of that action, well, then let's go for it. So we joined it, but never knowing how successful the show would become. None of us really ever knew. It was something that we had a feeling would do well, but we were never really sure, as you can never be, because that's just the music industry. There's no blueprint to success. And then joined the show, and it went from strength to strength. And I suppose because I had quite a bit of experience under my belt at that point in my life, it was kind of, it felt all very natural, you know what I mean? And that's meant in I'm hoping I'm not coming across as big-headed, but it's certainly, it was just a natural progression, and doing television and meeting people that were fans of your music, etc. It was all very humbling and very, very, I suppose it would knock you for six sometimes. You're kind of going, wow, the amount of, you go from, let's say, from Maine all the way over to Spokane, and there'll be people that would know you, and up to Canada, and then you went down to Australia, and there was people that knew us there as well. So, certainly that was amazing, but never to the point where we had to adjust our lives. I mean, I've led the same life that I've led since before joining it, and I'm very lucky in that I'm in a long-term relationship. I've just got engaged in May, to a girl who understands the industry, and so when I would come back from tour, or whenever I would be doing whatever I'd be doing, I would just go back to normality, and my family and my friends and my fiance would treat me just like I was any other time, So I think that's important. I think anybody that's getting into the music industry or looking to become successful or famous or whatever it might be that they're looking to do, I think the core of it and the best way to survive it is by having normal people around you,
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the differences of touring as a solo act as opposed to being with a group?
I suppose there's pluses and minuses to it. I mean, the pluses, of course, are that, you know, you're your own boss. You've only got to answer to yourself. You know, you pick your own songs. You're only responsible for yourself. You know, if the show's a good show, it's because of you. If it's a bad show, it's because of you. And so I enjoy that. And I think, you know, just fundamentally deep down, I was always a kind of a solo artist because that was my training. That was the way I had started out, you know. The negative side of it, I suppose, or the minuses of it, is that you miss a bit of the banter that you would have with the guys when you're on the road. You know, the big production would always come along with a lot of staff. So there was always good fun, and there was always, you know, a bit of camaraderie. And I suppose if you were feeling a little under the weather, that one or two of the other guys would carry you through the show, you know. So those kind of things certainly worked in favor of being in the show. But as a soloist, you're out there, you're giving it your all, and I think by the end of the show, it's more rewarding. I've got to be very honest with you, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now you got a Kickstarter program going. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be more than delighted to. Yeah. So basically, when I left Celtic Thunder, I left back in 2010. And I released my first album after that, and it was called This Is the Moment, which I will say is available online on Amazon and iTunes, and it's available in Barnes & Noble and FYE, so anybody that's out there listening, shameless plug by me, Paul Byrom, there you go. But
yeah, buy it. Buy it,
buy it, people, buy it. So I released that, and we didn't really know how it would go, but I certainly wanted to release it with a list of songs on it that I thought would you know, showcase me for what I was and where I was hoping to go. And then it went in its first week into the world Billboard charts at #1. So we were delighted and very excited about that. And then, you know, my objective was always then on the back of that to try and take it to the next level, which was turning that album with all the other songs that I've sung in the past and songs that I hope to sing in the future, and put it into a PBS special. So that's what we're at the moment. We're literally planning a PBS special, which will, all going well, be broadcast across, you know, the majority, if not all, of the local PBS stations throughout the States. In order, obviously, to do this, you know, a lot of the PBS stations, as you well know, have very little budgets as it is. So you literally have to put it all together yourself. You know, there's no financial support from PBS. So you've got to go out and raise the capital yourself, which, as you can imagine, putting these shows together, it costs quite a bit. And it was always something that it was a luxury to have as a soloist, you know, to have a PBS special or to be asked to do a PBS special. But what has happened now in the States is that a lot of local promoters, you know, won't take your gig unless they've got the support of the local PBS station, you know, or something that's showing on television, you know. So we've discovered that in order to be able to go out on tour and right across the States, I needed to get this special sorted. So we're aiming to film the show in early next year, and in order to raise the funds, I set up this Kickstarter account, which is a well-known website here in America, where basically your fans or your followers can help donate to the cause. And you give them incentives, and so basically I set it up, and I kind of felt a bit weird about it because it's certainly something that doesn't exist in Ireland, really, you know, and the concept alone is like, and asking people for money, and I couldn't get my head around it, really. So I said, look, anyways, my agent and my manager and a couple of friends just said, look, just put it up, see what happens, you know, what's the worst that can happen? And I put up the Kickstarter account 2.5 weeks ago, and we're aiming to get to $50,000 on it.
Wow.
In order, yeah. Now, that, let me tell you, it will only be a fraction of the funds that will need to be raised in order to get the PBS special, but it will help a long way. And the bottom line with the Kickstarter thing is if you don't hit the $50,000, you don't get a penny. So you have to hit that target. So we are 13 days left on the project, and you have a timeline, you know, so I have 13 days left on it, and we are at $43,500 pledged.
Sounds like you're going to make it.
Well, please God. And I think anybody that's out there that, you know, is enjoying the music or knows me and wants to see me more, maybe they will donate. And as I said, a $2 pledge is better than nothing, and we're grateful for any pledge, as many people have already. And I'm hoping, as I said, it'll help me get my special together. I have a wonderful musical producer who I'm going to be meeting tomorrow to confirm that he's on board, and I will be announcing that as soon as we get to the 50,000 mark. He'll be well known to many people. And I have a couple of guests that have already said they will appear on the show, and it'll be filmed live in front of a live audience. So we're really kind of hoping that it comes together,
Yeah. Well, Paul, I'm sorry to say this, but we're almost out of time. But before we go, I always give everyone the opportunity to let their fans know where they can go to their social media and stuff like that to get more information about you. You mind telling people about that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So, you can go to Twitter, Paul Byrom. He's there. I'm there every day, just chatting away to people all the time. I look at comments that are left all the time, so feel free to check in there. I've also got an official website, official page, Paul Byrom Official on Facebook. And, of course, the website, my official website is www.paulbyrom.ie, and all my news and events and blogs and pictures and the whole lot are there. And before I go mentioning all of that, putting all of that aside, I do want to take the opportunity to thank everybody that's listening in, because I know there's a lot that are listening in today. Thank you for all your support, especially recently with this Kickstart account. It's been overwhelming to see the support that I'm getting right now, and I just hope I don't let anybody down, and I will continue to work as hard as I can in order to avoid that.
Well, Paul, thank you very much for being on our program, and you're always welcome on our show, and everybody out there, please donate to Paul's Kickstarter program. Randy, do you have any final words for Paul Byrom?
Paul, it was an absolute pleasure and an honor to get to talk to you on our show, and I wish you well in all you do in the future.
Oh, well, I do appreciate the support, and it's because of the likes of yourself that I have a good shot at making it over here, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, Paul, for being on our program. This has been the 25th Hour Radio Show. Join us next Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Time when our guests will be Eastwood Frisch and American Lion. Until then, I'm Rob Fairless, and for Randy Ashby, we will talk to you later. Thanks again, Paul.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
The 25th Hour Radio Show.